everyone, and welcome to today's webinar from Euractiv, where we're going to be talking about how chemistry can serve as a catalyst for a green and circular EU rebound. My name is Dave Keating. I'm a journalist based in Brussels, and I'm coming at you live from the Euractiv studios in the heart of the EU Quarter. And here in the EU Quarter, one of the biggest topics of the past year, other than the obvious one, has been the EU Green Deal. Believe it or not, it may seem like 20 years ago, but in fact, the Green Deal is about to turn 1 year old. It was adopted by the European Commission on December 11th, 2019. And when it was adopted, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said that it was going to be a framework to shape all EU policy. It's a horizontal framework that's meant to guide all EU policymaking. And indeed, over the past year, we have seen it do just that. Every new proposal coming out from the European Commission at least gives a nod to the Green Deal. Now, the way President von der Leyen describes it, this is going to be a real fundamental reshaping of our economy and our society. And it's working toward an end goal of making the European Union climate neutral, reducing its emissions down to net zero by 2050. So all sectors in the EU economy are supposed to be embracing this and transforming their sector appropriately. And the chemical sector has a key role to play. And we saw that play out when the Commission unveiled its EU Chemical Strategy for Sustainability in October. That strategy is looking at how chemistry can interact with this transformation, and also how the EU can boost innovation in chemistry to increase the use of safe and sustainable chemicals, promoting the EU's security of supply for critical chemicals, and increasing the standards of chemical use globally. Now, one of the other policy areas from the EU that chemistry is going to play into is the circular economy, which is a policy older than the Green Deal, actually. And that's looking at making our use of products and really all elements of our economy more circular. That is not a throwaway society, not making something, using it, and tossing it in the garbage, but actually having a circle, having it go all the way around so that products are built for reuse. And there, chemistry obviously has a very key role to play. But its role is nuanced, I would say, because, of course, increased recycling and reuse is a net good that we want. But there's also some dangers present there when we talk about the chemicals that can be in products when they're recycled. So that's another big focus of this Commission strategy, is making sure that the chemicals that are in products that are recycled or reused are safe. And obviously, the chemistry sector is going to have a big role to play there, making sure that chemicals are safe as we transition over to this reuse type of economy. Now, increased reuse and recycling, not only is it a net good, but it also helps us to complete that circle, to make sure that companies, when they're designing products, are thinking about the end-of-life stage for their products. And that has safety concerns, but it also has dismantling concerns. Essentially, you want to make sure that companies are building things in a way that it doesn't encourage people to just throw them out. It encourages the profit, the net profit, the raw materials in that product to be able to be reused for value. Because of course, this has a big interest to business if we can stop waste, if we can stop throwing things out that might be otherwise valuable. Now, to achieve all of this, alliances between suppliers and customers all along the value chain are going to be key. A single industry can't achieve circularity alone. So today we're going to be talking about how a systematic approach across the value chain can be adopted to make sure that these goals are met and that the chemistry sector can fully contribute to this transition. Now, before we get started, a couple housekeeping notes. You guys are going to be able to ask your questions to the panelists using the Q&A feature on Vimeo. That's on the tab to the side. I'm going to go ahead and start that Q&A now, so you can start asking your questions now. As people talk, you think about a question, go ahead and put it in. It would be great if you can identify yourself and your organization if it's not already in your name, but you can also ask your question anonymously if you like. Very important point, the Q&A is only for questions. If you'd like to make a comment or a statement, you can use the chat. That's a separate feature. So Q&A is for questions. I will be seeing those questions and I'll be reading them out to the panelists at the end. The chat feature is for statements. I'm not seeing the chat feature, but if you ask a question in the chat feature, I won't see it to be able to ask your question, so we wouldn't want it to go to waste. You can also join in the conversation on Twitter. The hashtag is right there below me, EA Debates. So we're going to start today with some introductory remarks. We're going to have a keynote address from Kirsten Jorna, the Director General of DG GROW at the European Commission. But first, we're going to have a welcome address from Ilham Kadri, who's the CEO of Solvay.
Hello, Dave, and thank you. And thanks to Euractiv for partnering with us on this event. I believe these dialogues are really important to bring diverse stakeholders together and discuss how we find solutions to the enormous challenges facing us. Pulling ourselves out of the devastating economic crisis while also facing the imminent threat of climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the context, and it won't be easy. But this is an opportunity to hit the reset button. Allow me now to paint a picture for you. A picture of the future I believe is possible if we all reinvent progress together and mobilize the power of science. Imagine with me. Imagine an electric bike as light as a feather, which transforms your daily commute to work into clean and healthy pleasure. Imagine with me driving your kids to school in an electric car, so quiet, it feels like the ideal cocoon for beautiful conversations, and later they hop onto a green hydrogen bus with their classmates for a day trip to the Natural Science Museum, which may be a little bit more noisy, but so much fun. Imagine with me flying around the world without burning a single drop of oil. In fact, Bertrand Piccard and his partner did precisely this with their solar-powered aircraft in just 23 days, not only much faster than the character in Jules Verne's trip in 80 days around the world, as you all know, but also, and certainly, with less greenhouse gas emissions. Imagine with me how in the next decade, technology and innovation will enable lightweighting, circularity, and will bring us closer to carbon neutrality. But for now, looking at this year, 2020, the Earth Overshoot Day already fell on August 22nd. This was the date where we have used up all the capacity of our planet's ecosystem available for a single year. Think about it. There has been far less pollution and consumption due to the worldwide lockdowns during this unprecedented global pandemic, and yet humanity still managed to use up all planetary resources meant for 12 months in just 8 months. So the real question becomes how our industries, and above all, the mother of all industries, the chemical industry, can be part of the solution. And how we will tear off that label which calls us the problem. Because yes, the industry has been part of the problem, but it is also part of the solution. Because without industry, there is no reinvention. And without industry, there is no future. All of us, scientists, academia, industrialists, investors, authorities, NGOs, citizens of all generations, need to wipe the slate clean and bring forward the solutions that the world needs. Let me give you some real-life examples. Our industry is moving from coal to biomass, and I spoke recently with Norbert, a plant manager in Rheinberg, Germany, who is creating a renewable ecosystem in his site. With the support of the authorities, Norbert found a partner and asked him to collect wood waste within a 100-kilometer radius of his plants. Even up to the Netherlands, believe it or not, to source biomass. This is, by the way, a big deal for our company that has relied on coal power for the past 150 years. We are also taking agriculture waste and giving it a new purpose. My colleague Peter and his team, responsible for our flavoring business, is able to derive natural organic vanillin or vanilla flavoring from discarded rice husks. This not only serves consumers' desire for more natural ingredients, as you all know, it is also a perfect example of circularity. Think about it. If you reuse the husk, it is no longer a waste. We are turning trash to treasure. We are also turning toilet water to tap. And don't laugh. This is real. And you can drink it, by the way. At least I did. Let me explain. Chemistry can take gray wastewater and make it so pure that you actually need to add minerals to give it a taste back that is accepted by humans. Let me tell you about an example of circularity that puts a smile on my face every time I think of it. When I was working in the United Arab Emirates, my team developed a filtration system to process wastewater for a country's largest dairy producer. After treatment, the wastewater was sprayed as a cool shower to keep the herd comfortable during the hot summer season, and you know that it can be hot out there, and therefore producing more milk. I really like the idea that I contributed to making thousands of cows happy in the heat of the Middle East using their own recycled water. And all this stems from a deeply rooted personal conviction. I grew up in a happy yet very frugal home in Casablanca. I learned that I didn't have the luxury to waste. And sustainability started in my home with the conservation of water, energy, and food. What I did to preserve the limited resources I had in my youth, we must all do it now. So we simply must do things differently. We need not to make incremental changes anymore until we reach a new status quo, but the other way around. We need to think of a new word, a new vision of success, and then make it happen. The examples I gave earlier are just a few anecdotes of how chemistry is already playing a vital role in building circularity. In fact, we are very proud to be a partner of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, who is helping us and many other companies to rethink, redesign, and build a positive future through the framework of a circular economy. Which brings me to my final point. We cannot do it alone. Private companies alone simply cannot finance such fundamental shifts. They require resources and governmental support. I am convinced that tomorrow's rebound will come from public-private partnership investments in green technology. I'm thinking, for example, of the European Battery Alliance, where the EU has helped to drive innovation for competitive battery manufacturing in Europe for cleaner mobility. We all agree that we are racing against time, and more than ever, I am optimistic as we navigate this unprecedented crisis. The new EU Green Deal gives us an incredible opportunity to transform the chemical industry and mobilize science, technology, and resources to fight climate change. We also need citizens to understand and advocate for this change, and that's where civil society comes in. So let's find these new paths towards a more sustainable future. Let us unleash the potential of the ingenuity of our people at the service of a truly circular economy through the power of science. Let us build this future together. We are the very last generation that has the luxury to make a choice. Thank you.
Well, some really interesting examples there of the use of chemistry and sustainability, particularly the toilet water example. I think Ilham is much braver than me, although I could maybe be convinced to try it as well. Let's move on now to our keynote speech. That is from Kirsten Jorna, Director General of DG Grow at the European Commission. Kirsten?
Thank you very much, Dave, and thank you, Ilham, as well for sharing a great scene setter with us. My part is probably being more, the public side, a bit more boring. First of all, COVID. The autumn 2020 economic forecast points to minus 7.4 growth. The pandemic health crisis initially has really turned into an economic crisis. The European Chemical Industry Council reported recently that the output, chemical output in the EU has dropped by 4%, 4.4%. Manufacturing output was down to minus 10.6%. And also the users of chemical solutions, like, for example, the automotive sector, minus 28%. Basic metals saw a drop of 15.5%. So we have to pick it up from here. The EU has not just observed. We are working hard to get the recovery going, to sustain our companies with liquidity support, both from the member states and from the EU, and making sure that we can actually use the situation now for a better recovery, bouncing forward into a better green, digital, and resilient future. When you ask the question whether chemistry can serve as a catalyst for green and circular recovery, my answer is it's much more. It's actually an active ingredient. And I would like to illustrate that. As we noted in our chemical strategy, from Chemicals Strategy for Sustainability, that's the correct title. The chemicals value chain comprises 30,000 companies, directly employs over 1 million qualified staff, and has a turnover of more than 500 billion euro. Chemicals are enablers for many other sectors that will have to lead in the green and circular transition. To put it simply, without chemistry and the chemical industry, there will be no green and circular rebound. Chemicals are fundamental for our high living standards and well-being. They're nearly everywhere, and they play an important role in all of our 14 industrial ecosystems. The EU has the most advanced chemicals legislation in the world. We are the absolute front runner in this respect, and for over 50 years already, our chemicals legislation has progressively increased the protection of our citizens and the environment. There are still hazardous substances on the market, and science and societal demand evolve, so it's time to become even more ambitious. The Commission's Chemical Strategy for Sustainability is the vehicle to translate that ambition. What we want to do, the plan, is to step up substitution of certain chemicals with particularly hazardous properties. However, and this was just mentioned before, we also have to realize that chemicals and chemicals innovation are completely necessary for digital transition, climate neutrality, and circular economy. We will need some of the hazardous chemicals to manage, because we need them for the transition, and we need to manage in a good way their potential risks. Also, we should not look at the strategy as a standalone initiative. There are interlinkages with other strategies and initiatives, and there should be consistency among them. For example, we cannot require electrification of the automotive industry under one strategy and ban or severely restrict the use of the chemicals necessary for the batteries of electric vehicles in another. The Green Deal, as was said before, is the instrument to bring it together and make all these strategies mutually supportive. I'd like to present 3 examples to show concretely how it could work. These examples concern batteries, which were already mentioned, plastics, and textiles. Now, take batteries. Today, batteries are omnipresent in phones, laptops, cars, and they will be even more present tomorrow. Battery innovation is playing an essential role in the transition towards renewable energy, which is the key, as we know, for mitigation of climate change. Better energy storage technologies can help replace fossil fuels. Did you know that batteries currently account for nearly 90% of all patenting activity in the area of electricity storage? This is driven by advances in chargeable lithium-ion batteries for consumer electronics and electronic cars. These new lithium-ion chemistries have strong potential for a greater power output, durability, charging speed, and recyclability. They will boost the market for electric vehicles to gain ground. This way, we take a step further on the path to green transition. Other electricity storage technologies are also rapidly emerging, such as redox flow batteries and high-temperature sodium batteries. All this wouldn't be possible without chemicals. My second example is plastics. Chemistry invented plastics. Today, we need plastics for the low-carbon economy. Very often, plastics actually are the material with the lowest carbon impact, and substitution by other materials would actually increase our CO2 emission. But, and that is also pretty obvious, the release of plastic waste into the nature is problematic and not acceptable. This is why we need to build a circular economy for plastics with functioning business models. Here again, chemicals are part of the solution. With new technologies like chemical recycling, we can take care of the plastic waste, which is currently difficult to recycle. We can deliver recycled plastics of higher quality. This means combining environmental benefits and higher value added. Another, and my third example, concerns textiles. Chemical recycling is also emerging for textiles, in particular multi-fiber textiles. Several innovative companies have started to develop chemical recycling for textiles. For example, it should be possible to recycle fishing nets into polyamide for textiles. The Commission supports R&D projects on this new technology. It's another example of an innovation based on chemicals with a huge potential to unlock the circular economy. Chemical recycling is an example of chemicals innovation that is an essential building block of the circular economy on a broad scale. Making this innovation scale up will require many efforts from the value chain, from product design to investments to infrastructure and equipment. It also requires to demonstrate the environmental benefit of chemical recycling, in particular in terms of energy consumption and CO2 emissions. Where there is a clear case that the new technology is better for the environment and safe, it then needs to find its place within new circular business models. This requires unprecedented cooperation between all stakeholders along the value chain, as it was already mentioned in the opening statement as well. Let me be clear, it's not about new technology to continue business as usual. This is about inventing the green and circular business models for tomorrow. And I very much count on the cooperation with the industry because we cannot invent business models in our offices. It's the collaborative approach as we do in the Plastics Alliance, for example. I remain committed to making chemicals work to address the needs for society. For example, we are just about to postpone in a record time the sunset date for some chemicals that we need to produce the COVID vaccines to combat the virus. So I go back to where I started. Our rebound after the crisis can be nothing but green, circular, and digital. And I'm convinced that there is an economic model, a business case for sustainable chemicals in Europe. And I'm looking forward to building this model collectively and actively with the whole value chain. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Kirsten. So much to think about there when we think about the transition that's going to be necessary in our economy, particularly as we look at the COVID recovery. Thank you very much, Kirsten, for joining us this morning. Let's move on to the panel so we can discuss some of these issues. I'd like to introduce our panelists now. We have with us this morning Cristina de Avila. She's head of unit for sustainable chemicals at the Environment DG at the European Commission. And we have Michael Koch, CEO of Mitsubishi Chemical Advanced Materials. We have Andrew Morley, Chief Executive of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Jesus Urios, Policy Analyst at the Institute for European Environmental Policy, IEEP. And Pascal Chalvon-Demerset, Chief Sustainability Officer at Solvay. Thank you all so much for joining us. And a reminder to you at home, you guys are able to ask your questions to the panelists by using the Q&A feature on Vimeo. Cristina, let me start with an opening question to you. I mentioned the new chemical strategy for sustainability in my opening remarks. Can that strategy serve as a growth opportunity for the EU chemicals industry? Or should people see it as something that restrains the chemicals industry, or is it actually an opportunity?
Thank you for the question and good morning to all. But of course, it's a growth opportunity. But maybe what we need to clarify first is what kind of growth opportunity we want for the chemical industry or for the European industry in general. So in this European Commission, we have set ourselves the goal of tackling climate change and environmental related challenges in the Green Deal. And the European Green Deal, as has been mentioned today already by you and also by Kirsten Jorna, is our new growth strategy. It's the European Union's new growth strategy. We aim through the Green Deal to transform the European Union into a fair and a prosperous society with a resource-efficient and competitive economy, where economic growth should be decoupled from resource use. And the chemicals strategy is a deliverable of the Green Deal. It's the first deliverable of the Green Deal's zero pollution ambition. So that's the context in which the chemical strategy has been written and adopted. And indeed, in the chemical strategy is and serves as the growth opportunity for the chemicals industry. But we want this to be a safe and sustainable growth opportunity. I think through the examples that we have heard already today from Solvay, but also from our Director General from DG Grow, we have seen that there is no way to achieve sustainability without chemicals, but also that having a sustainable growth and sustainable use of chemicals is fundamental to achieve sustainability overall. So in our strategy, we have set a double purpose. One is prevent pollution as a good deliverable of the zero pollution ambition. This is a main to set the industry in the path of the innovation path for a green transition. We cannot achieve these goals that we are setting ourselves to achieve without European industry's contribution and transition into safe and sustainable chemicals. So we want the new chemicals to be designed to be safe and sustainable. We want the most harmful chemicals to not be there actually from the beginning, not entering the market, in particular for consumer users. we can see later on in the debate that there are nuances to it. So we need to decide. We want to use certain chemicals that pose high risk for human health and for the environment. We need them for batteries, fair enough, but do we need them for cosmetics? Do we need them for our moisturizers? And these are the questions that we will need to start working on, and we call them the discussions on essential uses. No? So we need to bear in mind the entire life cycle also of a chemical and of the products the chemicals are in, and make sure that only safe chemicals end up in the circular economy. We need to prevent rather than try to solve the problems that we find at the end of the pipe in the waste stage. And that's where the chemical strategy indeed meets circular economy. And industry innovation and making this green transition is and will be the driver for a sustainable economic growth. So this is the approach that we're taking in the chemicals strategy, and we hope that we can all go hand in hand and make all our objectives achievable in this mutual efforts. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Michael, let's turn to you next. You're very much involved in chemicals innovation. What do you expect from chemical technologies in terms of new ways to accelerate circularity?
Well, thanks, Dave, and good morning to everyone. I'm Michael Cook, and I'm running the advanced materials business within Mitsubishi Chemical Corporation. Within Mitsubishi Chemical, we have an approach called Kaiteki, which is the sustainable well-being of people, society, and our planet Earth. And within this plan, we developed the Vision 2030, which is backcasted from the social vision, and their circularity plays a major part in our way of doing business. We in Advanced Materials, as also Dave just said, we are developing and producing solutions out of advanced materials, so working very closely with key OEMs to understand their needs and develop corresponding solutions. We work here very closely with companies like Solvay because basically we're sitting in the same boat. Solvay produces and supplies materials, and we are making finished and semi-finished parts for our customers. And via this approach, we have the opportunity to evaluate and influence the total value of advanced material solutions beyond cradle to gate till cradle to cradle. And in our view, it's essential that we take this total circular picture for the whole supply chain in consideration, which also Kerstin mentioned very nicely just ahead. To show our commitment in this area, we have just recently done two investments, the one in advanced materials, the other one in chemical, in carbon fiber recycling. And in both, we offer now circular solutions for post-industrial and post-consumer products. But to realize this, we can only do this when we form broader corporations within the whole supply chain. And in close cooperation with Solvay again, we already had several OEMs very committed to work with us to create new circular solutions, which then, as mentioned several before, contribute to our planet, but we also believe offers great business opportunities. And as a last comment, Mitsubishi is very engaged in the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the Alliance to End Plastic Waste and Value Balancing Alliance, engagement on how to anchor and prove our commitments and really support steps accelerating the circularity. So thanks for having me here, because I'm very excited about any initiative towards more circularity, because we can only do this all together.
Thanks very much, Michael. You mentioned the Ellen MacArthur Foundation there, so let's go to Andrew from that foundation. Andrew, what is your perception of the role of chemistry in the circular transformation?
Well, I think it's been really very well stated already by both Ilham and Kerstin, and Michael and Christina as well. I mean, I think it's really clear that chemistry is a very essential part of the modern economy, and it's a foundational piece. It's essential for the modern economy, and we should think about it not just as a catalyst, but as an ingredient as well, as Kerstin said. And what I'd like to just emphasize is that the circular economy is really a framework solution for looking at how we can transform industrial systems and the economy in a way that does in fact deliver enormous benefits, not just in terms of waste and pollution, but in terms of the energy demand of the system, by really getting to the heart of production and consumption and looking at how we can lower the energy demand of the system by keeping materials in use more, in use longer. And chemistry plays a crucial role in that. How do we actually keep valuable materials in the economy longer? Chemistry, the types of roles of chemistry, not just in the product itself, but in its durability and its longevity. So many of the points I think have been made. I'd just like to emphasize that point that Kirsten made, that this is not just about making business as usual less harmful, which often, when we talk about sustainability, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to limit or reduce the harm of the existing business models. The circular economy is a fundamental rethink of the way in which we design and put products into the economy, keep them used for longer, and ultimately, play a role in regenerating and in regenerating natural systems and nature. So it's that combination of things, and we can see many of the world's leading companies now embracing this idea. It's at its heart, it's a really simple idea, and the leading CEOs and companies absolutely get this, and they're embracing the vision, and they're looking really hard at how we innovate for the transition towards this type of system. And obviously other parts come into play as well. We need to manage through the transition, so we need sustainability, and we need to make sure that we capture the harmful chemicals and keep those out of natural systems and keep people healthy. So it's a combination of these things, and it is a new approach, as has been commented. We have to bring people together in different ways. We have to think about value chains, and we have to innovate and retain the value of these materials in the economic ecosystem. So it's a combination of these things, and it's really super encouraging to see so many leading companies embrace this thinking, and the European Commission and European countries really embrace this and adopt policy positions that are enabling this type of innovation and this type of transformation to occur. And it's both, public finance and public policy, but also we're seeing, financial players like BlackRock and many others we're working with who are also really embracing this thinking and looking at how we can direct finance in a way that helps encourage and helps companies to actually move through the transition from linear types of systems to more circular economic ones.
Thanks. So Andrew mentioned policies that are being put in place for sustainability. Let's get a think tank perspective on this. Jesus, let's turn to you. How would you say that the European Union can help support the innovation that's needed to make chemistry contribute to the sustainable circular economy and also ensure the EU's climate objectives?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for Euractiv for organizing the event. I'm very happy to be here today. So we know that both the increased investment, but also the innovative capacity of the chemical industry, as it was mentioned before, to provide chemicals compatible with the EU, both health and environmental objectives, this will be key. However, for this transition to happen, the EU needs to step up its innovation efforts through both an appropriate legislative framework, but also through other non-legislative support measures. At the EIP, we welcome the provisions for innovation that the Commission has put on the Chemical Strategy for Sustainability. However, it is important that these new commitments in the strategy are rapidly transformed into action in the real world, because action needs to take place now. First and foremost, EU regulations concerning chemicals must be able to adapt and respond more rapidly to the main problem on the chemical industry, which is the hazardous chemicals. But this has to be done at the same time while enhancing legislative coherence and predictability. This is key for any industry, and obviously for the chemical industry as well. Because if the industry is aware that chemicals damaging the environment will be banned at some point, or they will be highly restricted, then the industry itself will be able to focus its research efforts on more sustainable choices. We also think an important thing is that European rules must apply for both European and also imported goods to ensure a good level playing field for the European industry, but also to incentivize sustainable innovation in the world stage. As it was mentioned before as well, since innovations in the chemical industry have many important spillover effects to other sectors of interest for the EU and the EU Green Deal objectives in construction, textiles, or examples were mentioned before as well. The EU should ensure that these groundbreaking innovations towards sustainability in the sector are supported by sufficient investments derived from the next generation EU funds. Because this kind of help will satisfy the main objectives of the fund, to recover from the economic effects of the pandemic, while also advance in both the transition to the green and to the green economy. Finally, in order to ensure that these innovations and help the climate objectives to be met, the EU needs to emphasize the relationship between the chemical industry and the circular economy. Because the right use of chemicals can boost recycling, as you said before, and reduce natural resources consumption. But also, it can lead to cost cuts into the business. So I think that will be how I think that the EU can contribute to for a better.
Thanks very much, Jesus. Now let's get a company perspective from Pascal. I mean, we've heard some of the ideas about what policies can be put in place there. What does a company like Solvay, what do they need for support in terms of advancing innovation in this area, both for sustainability and for mitigating climate change?
Thank you, Dave, and thank you all. Yeah, a company like Solvay really welcomes the Green Deal and is really very committed to sustainability. Actually, we see it as a tremendous opportunity. This has been mentioned, and we believe that chemistry can be a catalyst or an ingredient, as mentioned earlier. We are happy to see that chemistry is recognized as an essential industry. And it's true that you have chemistry everywhere, in your cars, clothes, food, everywhere around us, So it's essential and crucial to consider that we become more and more part of the solutions and less and less part of the problems, I would say. So what we need from European Commission is really to consider industry as an essential ally and bring all stakeholders together, to engage in real constructive dialogue. We need to turn the Green Deal into a co-constructed green growth strategy. Green growth means disconnected from the greenhouse gas emissions, from non-regenerable materials use. So, that we have at Solvay adopted a holistic, inclusive approach. This is our Solvay One Planet roadmap, which corresponds a lot with the grading in terms of thematics. We have, ambitious plan to phase out coal each time possible. We are fully aligned with the Paris Agreement, and on circularity, we have a proud and bold 15% target of turnover from renewable or recycled materials by 2030, for example. So what we need, and I have 3 points, is really a coherent framework for innovation and investment for clean and circular growth. First, and this has been mentioned by Jesus, and I fully agree with that. I mean, we need the EU to accelerate its support to innovation. Not only support, but accelerate the support. The speed is essential. Not only product and technologies, but also business models. And this is where we have the circularity, which is really a transformative business model. We have, for example, chemical recycling as a strong enabler. There is no full battery recycling without chemical technologies. This has been mentioned already. Lithium, cobalt, nickel from the black mass has to be extracted purified, and without, let's say, chemistry, this is not possible. And we need to think one step ahead. We need to think new generations of batteries. We are working at Solvay on solid state batteries. We should be safer, stay longer with lower cost of ownership, but it requires really very significant resources. So, and as started by Andrew already.
I think Pascal's video may have frozen there. Let's see if he comes back. No, I think he was wrapping up anyway, so thanks, Pascal. We'll see if we can get you reconnected. In the meantime, I did have a question for Michael. In terms of when we're thinking about how companies are changing their approach to sustainability, particularly during the crisis. Pascal, I see you're reconnected. Thanks there. I'm just asking a question for Michael here. When we're looking at how companies are going to get through this crisis, come out on the other side of this, and think about basically the new world we're going to be looking at after the COVID-19 crisis. Do you think, Michael, that companies are changing their approach to sustainability because of COVID? And what do you think sustainability is going to look like after we're on the other side of this crisis?
Well, is it a fortunate or unfortunate coincidence of the event? I think everybody understands what trouble it created. And I see tremendous change in the attitude, which several speakers said before. So the openness to now look at new solutions really driven by circularity and support our planet, in my view, is so much changing. And in a lot of the activities we go to customers or supply chains, the willingness is very, very big and very different than before. So I think people see that even though we have a crisis, the sustainable future can only be when we really embrace this. Give you an example on the automotive industry, as we are a supplier to this industry. They look at, in their inquiries today already, of how can we help them to reduce their LCA over the next 5-6 years to get to climate neutral. And for me, this is very encouraging. So in a very short time, they have changed to together look at how can we put roadmaps in place to get to lower environmental footprint. And even in our area on technical parts, the companies are very open to look at. And let me maybe make one link to the EU and legislation. I think also there we need to help to be open and look at, and give me an example on a standard raw material has a certain way of how it's described, how it's approved. But if we go to closed or open loops, we need different ways of how we justify, how we make sure that we for sure fulfill the law and be safe and not and all the toxicalities. But we need to rethink the methods and systems of how we did it for many, many years to allow these open loops. So to your question, I see a big change from everyone that says the only future and getting out of the pandemic is when we look at green, supported by the Green Deal, supported by all the initiatives. But we have a lot of work to do, looking everybody to see how can we enable these new opportunities.
Pascal, let me put the same question to you. I think you're back connected now. What do you think the other side of this is going to look like in terms of sustainability? And is Solvay preparing for a green rebound, if you will?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And sorry for the cut-off line. Yeah, you know, with the COVID, climate warming beyond 2 degrees or more. What about the consequences of fully disrupted biodiversity? So we realized that, and the key word now is clearly acceleration. And what we observe, from where we sit, is an acceleration from all stakeholders. Consumers and suppliers are changing very fast, coming to us with new demand on circularity. The overall finance community also is shifting from ESG niches to mainstream in terms of financing. So internally, we reinforce all the sustainability criteria, into our decision-making process. CapEx allocation, innovation, M&A, for example. So to be concrete, recently we raised the bar in terms of climate. Committing to set science-based target by joining the SBT initiative. We have also, maybe you have seen that, launched recently the new hydrogen platform, which we are really enthusiastic about, because hydrogen will be a key catalyst for clean mobility and energy storage over the long term. And we do not mention that it's really interconnected: climate, circularity, biodiversity. So we have also taken bold ambitions in order to reduce the pressures by 30% on biodiversity. We have jumped into Act for Nature coalition. So actually the key word is partnerships. We have, and we're very happy with that, we have this partnership with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I'm very happy to see Andrew here, working since 3 years. They're teaching us, actually. And really, we want to go next step to change from opportunistic approach to systemic approach. And we have also Michael and starting a cooperation with Mitsubishi Chemicals Advanced Materials, because you mentioned plastic, and this has been mentioned, plastic in the value chain. Plastic, we have a position at Solvay, which is not in the big volume plastic. We have to tackle also the specialized plastics, where the question is more how to collect and sort in order to enter into new loops of recycling. So yeah, we are accelerating, and we cannot do it alone. We need with all our partners.
Christina, I had a question for you. I talked a little bit about this also in my introduction, the issue of chemical recycling. I know that in the strategy from the Commission in October, there seemed to me to be quite a bit of concern about safety when we're talking about chemical recycling. So let me ask you, does the Commission see chemical recycling as a risk or as an opportunity, generally speaking, for the green and circular rebound?
So we have seen that chemical recycling can help overcome the limits of traditional mechanical recycling of plastics that cannot be dealt with mixed types of plastic in waste. And we in the European Commission, we welcome innovations in this field. Chemical recycling seems to be a great opportunity and opening to deal with all the currently unrecyclable plastics. However, we are also very mindful that there are still certain challenges to be considered in relation with chemical recycling. So we need to have more information on the environmental performance of these technologies, in particular relating to energy consumption, but also what is the actual yield of the processes back to plastic. Also, a life cycle approach needs to be followed in order to consider all the possible benefits and risk of this new approach, including climate. So, while the Commission acknowledges the benefits of this technology and the benefits that it may have regarding the elimination of the so-called legacy substances, and this is very much the context in which we are treating chemical recycling in the strategy, in the context of the legacy substances in the circular economy, we also must ensure that we not steer away from the focus of closing the material cycles. And to this aim, we need to work on choosing as building blocks those chemicals that can make this virtuous circle happen. So this is what our chemicals strategy for sustainability is about. This frame of mind in which chemical recycling is a last resort for legacy and as such a fringe of our main course of action. And if I may have a reaction in the context also of chemical recycling and what we've been hearing today so far. So I think it's clear for all of us, and I don't think anyone in the panel or in those that introduced the session today will disagree that chemicals are a contributor to the sustainability agenda. We've heard mentioning chemicals in terms of CO2 neutral, in terms of circular economy, resource efficiency. But of course, chemicals have always been in humans' ingenuity. Chemicals have always been the enablers, the routes to provide solutions. But so far, we have seen that they have been at the expense of turning a blind eye to the properties of the chemicals themselves. And this is where the chemicals strategy comes in. So we want to achieve climate neutrality. We want to achieve a circular economy. We need to be resource efficient. And we need chemicals to do so, but we need sustainable chemicals. So we cannot continue doing this at the expense of ignoring the properties that these chemicals have and the challenges and the risks they pose for human health and the environment. So all the chemicals that we are facing today, all the restrictions that we are undertaking in the European Union to control the risk of chemicals were at one point an innovation. D4, D5, D6 were an innovation. So we need to, we have seen also with the COVID-19 at which expense, reduce immune systems, lower capacity of immune response, affect the respiratory systems and also cardiovascular systems, making most of us, or a good number of us, many more of us, that we would otherwise be vulnerable to a vulnerable group in the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is what the chemicals strategy is about. Of course, chemicals are enablers. Of course, there are many innovation and many routes like chemical recycling, but do not forget that we need to take into account which kind of chemicals we are coming from to find these solutions.
Jesus, I know you've been working on this issue. What's your take on this? Should chemical recycling be a last resort?
Just make a quick point to what Christina was saying. I think it's in the recycling in general and the contribution of the chemical industry into the circular economy. I think this is very important that the supply chain, from consumers to recyclers, producers, everyone, should have clear information on all the identity and properties of all the chemicals in the products. This is a requirement in order to properly be able to maintain a quality in recycling materials, because at the end of the day, in order to enable a circular economy, if consumers or even producers don't associate that a recycling product or raw material is going to be as good as a virgin raw material, then the circular economy just won't happen probably. So I think it's very important that not only improve the systems, but also have full information about all the different chemicals present in all the products that are being recycled and the risk associated to them as well.
Did anyone else have any thoughts on this chemical recycling issue? Okay, let's move on. I have another question. This one's for Andrew. Andrew, I know you guys have been engaged in a number of partnerships taking place. We've talked about some of them already today. Tell me a little bit more about those partnerships and how those partnerships differ in terms of, we've got public policy that we've talked about that can enable this transformation, but how can these partnerships in the private sector and also between private companies and civil society, how can those enable this transition?
Well, I think from the outset, what we've tried to do over the last 10 years is to bring the actors together across value chains or ecosystems that are essential for keeping the value of materials in the economy for redesigning systems. So, a very good example is the plastics work we've done. In 2015, we brought together many of the actors across the entire value chain of plastics for the first time. So the polymer manufacturers, the packaging manufacturers, the brands, the cities that have the collection systems and the recycling industry as well. And what we wanted to do was to talk about how we could look at this as a system where plastics flow through the system and look at how we could really bring innovation to that topic so that we could redesign the plastics packaging, for example, in a way that both eliminated the unnecessary plastics, because we have to reduce the volume that's on market because so much of it is not necessary. And we have to take the unnecessary plastics out. We have to think about the design and the combination of materials so that when we collect them, we can in fact recycle them. But even more importantly, we need to think about product delivery systems and how we innovate for reuse. And if we want to reuse materials in the economy, we need to think about how to redesign the business models, how to look at the products. And if you think of a detergent where you can buy one bottle and then get concentrates in materials in a chemistry that you can drop into the bottle and add your own water to it. So there's an innovation solution there that keeps that one plastic bottle in use for many, many, many cycles. And we have new chemistry for concentrates and for them to be able to be dissolved in those bottles in your house, and a business model that says you can subscribe online so that the concentrates get delivered to you by the post into your house. So there's an innovation approach that really looks at the business model, looks at the chemistry, looks at the package itself. So it involves many of the actors across the system. And finally, when you want to, when it comes to the end of use and you need to recycle that bottle, how is it collected? How do you understand what the plastic is, and how does that get sorted and then recycled, whether it's by chemical recycling or physical recycling? So you need all of the actors across the value chain to be in that conversation. So, what you're putting into the economy is considerate of the ways in which those materials are going to be used and how ultimately they will be collected and reinserted in the economy. So you need to have collaboration, and you need to have the actors thinking about product design in systems, in context. And what I mean by that is, the products in Europe, when we put it on the market in Europe, it's very different than when we put it on the market, say, in Africa or India or some other country that doesn't have the same collection infrastructure. So you need to bring the players together to think about how to keep products used longer and in the system. And that requires initially coming together and then really collaborating ways that say, how do we capture the value from this idea, and how do we get the economics to work? And that's where the policy piece comes in play. So how does policy help to level the markets between, for example, recycled content and raw materials? How do policies help get standards in place to get the efficiency of collection and sorting to work? How do we get policies in place that help to get the infrastructure invested in for collection and sorting at a municipal level? So you do need the private sector and the public sector collaborating in the ways of understanding the entire system solutions and the economics of the entire system. And there's a role for private innovation. There's a role for public policy and investment, and obviously a role for transitioning, so we can actually get markets to work and then ultimately work more independently. So we've seen that, for example, in energy, where we had feed-in tariffs for renewable energies that have had a fundamental impact of the market economics between renewable energy and oil-based energy. So that required a government intervention to get that market to work. We need exactly that same sort of thinking for many aspects of the economy, whether it's electronics or built environment or fashion, plastics, or chemistry generally. We need to think about the public and private collaboration to get these new markets to work.
Yeah, Andrew, I think that's a really good point that you make there, which is that the markets that we're talking about here are so diverse, so different, particularly when it comes to recycling. So Michael, I want to get your thoughts on that, and also where you think the potential is for mechanical recycling versus chemical recycling in terms of value creation. What are you seeing in terms of the very different markets that you're operating in?
Yeah, well, it's a long question. I could talk now an hour, but I have to restrict myself. I think very important what was said before, that we really look along the value chain for the different products and applications. And that is our experience as well. As more as we get into a dialogue and have everybody on the table, like also Andrew just mentioned, then suddenly you get into next possibilities of how we do more and more recycling. And we maybe should not think always from 0 to 100, but we see that then we allow some first loops of mechanical recycling, and we can then work together how we isolate certain materials, how we clean certain things. Then we get the next stage of mechanical recycling, and then learn more and more where then maybe a easier way of chemical recycling comes into place when we then work like with the chemical companies who do this originally and know all the technology. And then in the last stage is what Christina said, then maybe when it can't separate and there is some really mixed things, then we get to the real explorative chemical recycling, which is then maybe with other chemicals and where we need to pay attention to all the rules and regulations. But our experience is really, if we go, and you asked me for examples, if you go, for instance, in Mitsubishi, we are very active in PET film for the packaging industry. Now we have already established mechanical recycling closed loops from post-consumer products. And that was 3 years ago, was unthinkable that this is possible. We go into technical applications ourselves, where we do out of the manufacturing process, we bring it back to basically substitute virgin material. So there are very nice examples in different industries, different volumes. You have in automotive some de-assembly circles, which goes back in the nylon chain, making back new parts. All things where at the beginning of a project, nobody thought that we get to this stage. And I think that's important, that we have the openness to think about how can we really get to creative solutions, but don't reinvent the wheel or the world in 100% in one step, but step by step work together, the different partners in the supply chain. And then I'm very positive that there are great solutions coming, because the last year or two, there are already a lot of great opportunities happening.
Questions. We have some great questions coming in from the audience. Before I take those, one last quick question for Jesus. All of these EU policies are really fancying themselves to be a leader for the world. That, the idea, like so much of EU regulation, the idea is that the EU's best practice here will be followed globally and affect the global playing field. Do you think that the EU is capable of impacting the global playing field when it comes to the sustainable use of chemicals and chemistry contributing to sustainability?
Right. So, well, obviously, I don't think that the EU on its own will be just changing things, but I think it's a key player in the industry, in the chemical industry world, but also as a global setting standard. Organization kind of thing. So, I think the EU has a key role in order to set the collaboration, also set up at the world stage, and now also that now we even have a better opportunity to communicate better with other major players like the US and the incoming administration, but also with China. I think this is very important. I think the EU can contribute a lot to this, and obviously we are also one of the biggest markets in the world. So obviously many industries that are outside the EU want to sell our goods in Europe. So the EU can make sure that the environmental standards are at its highest, as they are actually now in the world. And this will also make industries in other parts of the world to keep up and to make sure that innovation also is spilled over to other parts of the world.
Well, we have a question from the audience here. It's coming from Gabriel Benchetritz. It's a question for Christina. How will you decouple chemical production from the hydrocarbons industry? What's the sustainable angle?
Hi, I'm really not an expert on the hydrogen industry, but I think the important thing is and that's what we want to achieve through the strategy, is to find a balance of all the elements at stake. So first, what is the contribution of the solution, of the innovation? the chemical solution, or the industry in particular that uses chemicals, and what are the risks, what are the hazardous properties of the chemicals used, what are the risks associated with the use, and have a big picture of how both the innovation solution that industry provides and the other elements that come into play. So chemicals as such, hazardousness, risk associated with them, and energy use, circular economy, etc., play all in the different.
I think it may be freezing on Christina there. Christina, you're breaking up, so I think we got the gist of the answer. Thanks. I want to take the next question. It's on REACH. I knew there was only a matter of time here. This question is from Gustav Borchardt. He asks, is REACH still the right framework for the necessary innovations to come? I'd be curious to get Pascal's thoughts on this first. Just to explain to viewers at home, REACH is the EU's chemicals registration system. It's been in place for over a decade now. It is the bedrock of EU chemicals policy. Pascal, do you think REACH is the right framework for this transition?
Well, you know, of course, we welcome at the same time the Green Deal and the chemical strategy for sustainability, which is an essential piece. Regarding REACH, we believe that we have already, let's say in Europe, a very strong, and I would say in advanced system. So we, of course, the key principle in REACH that we hope it will be kept is really the risk management principle. What we are cautious about is to move to an hazardous only approach. And there is a big difference between the risk management and hazardous only. Just to take one example, when you use disinfectants, you know, it's designed to kill viruses and bacteria. So it's by design, to some extent, hazardous. When you have an active substance for cancer treatments, it's obviously also very toxic specific, I would say. So that's the notion of hazard. So the question of risk is just the hazard combined with the exposure and combined with the protection we can bring. So an overall answer would not fit to that question. I think we need to be careful not to reopening the Pandora box, because it's a huge amount of work. But we have to admit that in some cases the enforcement is not perfect, and then we have to look at very specific ways in order to reassure everybody, to change the image sometimes that chemistry is more on the problem than the solution. Chemistry is the solution, but we need to bring safe, circular, and climate-friendly solutions. And this cannot be done alone. So we need to work in a scientific mode. We need to be working in a scientific approach because we are technology agnostic. You know, we will choose the best alternative, but it's not the best regarding only hazardous. It's the best considering the benefit for the society also. So that's, you know, an exciting, very interesting questions, but which will need time to be solved.
Christina, what's the Commission's view on this? Is REACH still the best framework to make this transition happen?
Absolutely. We want and we have built our strategy on the existing regulatory framework, and REACH is a fundamental building block of this regulatory framework. We do not want to redo and to overhaul the extensive chemicals acquis that we have in the European Union. So REACH is absolutely a valid instrument, and we are relying on it and on the development of it in order to achieve the objectives of the strategy. So as I said before, and it has been mentioned by others, we cannot do this transition without chemicals. For that, we need to know about the chemicals, and REACH is the way to obtain information on chemicals. But we have seen that information we have is too little. We need to have more information. And this information, and you will see in the strategy, is not only about intrinsic properties. We also need to have more information about how the chemicals feature in terms of CO2 emissions, etc. So the registration and the REACH can become a very big thing and a very big way of reporting on sustainability in the broader sense of chemicals, and be a fundamental tool to achieve those or set those sustainability criteria that we want for chemicals. REACH is risk-based, and we are embracing risk-based in the strategy. We also make a nuance. There are ways of going risk-based, and for consumer uses, we've said in the strategy, and this is already implemented by REACH. So it's very much the REACH framework. For consumers, we want a generic risk approach because the uses are so difficult and exposure is so difficult to control. So we want a risk-based approach, but a generic one. And also, REACH has fundamental elements such as communication in the supply chain. I mean, we know, and we already established when we adopted REACH, but we are fully embracing the need of having a proper communication in the supply chain in order to be able to control this risk of chemicals. So if we are now starting the work on the implementation, it's not a speed race. This is rather a marathon. And if we end up at the end of this race in the place that we are setting now, or the vision that we have today for REACH, not only REACH will prove to be still valid, but it will come up quite reinforced after it. It has been proven in our discussions with other services in the Commission to be a tool that we can use to provide a lot of solutions for a lot of the challenges that we have ahead of us.
Indeed, and I mean this was the whole impetus of REACH when it was set up. It's about getting information about chemical properties and their use, and actually it's resulted in an unprecedented level of information. No major economy has anything like this level of information about chemicals now. Christina, we have another question for you. As is usually the case, many of the questions are coming in for the Commission representative. So we have a question here from Rob. Christina, should we be looking at reshoring textile industries, e.g. miscanthus, wow, these are tough words, miscanthus delignification plants for fibers? That's quite a specific question, but so getting to this question of textiles is one of those industries where chemical safety is a concern. To get a hold of that, should textile manufacture be reshored?
I'm not going to make any statement here whether we want industry in the EU or industry outside the EU. I think the EU is a global player, and we need to work with our trading partners within the rules set for our relationships together. So there are, with textiles actually, we have seen in the past that we have the power through our regulation to influence and to improve the safety of consumers and of workers in other places of the world. So with the restriction that we introduced in REACH on textiles, on CMRs in textiles, we have changed full supply chains, and these are not only European based industry supply chains, but also global supply chains. So I think in terms of a strategic autonomy, we make some calls in the strategy. It's not so much about having the industry be back in Europe, but about having properly diversified sources of sources of materials and of chemicals. So I don't think that necessarily we need to reshore all our industry here, but in Europe. But we can also see how to influence through our legislation and improve the conditions for all, including workers outside the European Union.
Does anyone else have a comment on this textile reshoring issue? Okay, Christina, we have one more question for you. Sorry. This one is from Leon. To support front runners, what are the 3 most impactful deliverables in the chemical sustainability strategy?
The support of the front runners is an issue that is very close to our hearts, because we think that they are the ones that can also help everyone, us authorities, but also other industry, to set different parts of action. No, as I said before, many of the challenges that we are facing today on chemicals were at some point an innovation. So we need to support a certain type of innovation, and for that, the front runners that today we are seeing that are finding it difficult to find a place, no, at the table, they need to find better conditions. So we, of course, are going to have a very wide dialogue with industry and other stakeholders through a roundtable that we need to set, and we hope that the front runners will have a good place at that table in order to help all of us understand what kind of innovation we could also be aspiring to. No, but there are, I think, other ways that we can help front runners, and we're still exploring them. And we are welcoming a lot initiatives and ideas on this. And I'm constantly trying to get in contact with these alternative providers in order to find other ways of helping them, especially if they're regulatory. We're very happy to hear about it. In any case, we will be in dialogue with them, and we will all be in a common structured dialogue in this roundtable.
Great, so we have another question from Rob here. This question is for Jesus. If we're looking at possible bans, I'm not sure, but which chemicals or chemical groups do you see being banned or highly restricted first?
Well, I'm not that much of a chemical expert, but I think though there is a certain kind of chemicals that the Commission has already made provisions under the strategy to ban unless they are strictly necessary, as probably was the case with the vaccines. These are probably the chemicals that they just remain in our ecosystems, but also in our bodies. I don't exactly know about the term, the chemical term of it. But I guess there is a category of the chemicals that stay always in the environment and are not able to just disappear. So I guess those ones should be a good start.
Great, thanks. So a lot of different issues that we've talked about during this conversation. There's so many facets of sustainability when it comes to chemicals. I want to get some closing thoughts from each of you now about some key takeaways from this discussion that struck you during our talk this morning. Let's go in reverse order from the introductory remarks. So Pascal, let's start with you. What are your key takeaways from this discussion?
Well, thank you, Dave. Well, I would say my key takeaway first is really the strong recognition that chemistry is essential, to make the Green Deal a success. And I really enjoy the word active ingredients more than catalyst, So that's really a very, very strong point. I think the notion of systemic transformation and huge innovation required in order to do that is essential. And nobody can do that alone. I mean, we need dialogue and coherence in all the different regulations coming all together. We need the accurate definitions, and visibility. And this has to be done between all stakeholders. And I'm very happy to have here in this panel, part of these stakeholders. I would say these are my key takeaway. And as mentioned by Solvay's CEOs in the first keynote, I mean, we are the very last generation that has the luxury to make a choice. So let's make it together.
Jesus, what are your key takeaways from this discussion?
For me, the main takeaway is that I see a clear disposition from all the different stakeholders, including industry, public authorities, for move forward and to implement changes, not only opportunistic as they said before, they mentioned before, but also systemic changes that lead to a more sustainable industry. That indeed is key, not only for our economy but also for our environmental objectives as a continent. So that would be my main takeaway, and I hope and I am sure that this level of collaboration will be even more improved, and I look forward to that as well.
Andrew, how about you? What are your concluding thoughts?
Well, I'd make two observations really. One is there's a lot of discussion about sustainability and mixing up the idea of a circular economy with sustainability. And the distinction I would make is we need to reduce the harm of linear systems, which is often what sustainability is talking about. You know, how do we better lightweight, prevent pollution, etc., of existing models? The circular economy really is quite different. It's really saying, how do we fundamentally change systems so that we eliminate waste and pollution and we keep materials in use and we regenerate natural systems? So first point is, I think we should be talking about sustainability and the circular economy and not mixing the two up. The second one is, as we think about the circular economy, most people talk about it in terms of circularity, and that takes them really into a waste and recycling agenda. And the circular economy is much, much more than just better recycling. It's really rethinking systems and working across value chains to really redesign entire segments of the economy so that we do in fact keep materials in use much more for much longer, and recycling then becomes, you know, the least valuable last resort. Actually, we want to keep the materials in the economy much more productive for much longer, and so I would just encourage people, when they think about the circular economy, is to think about it as a design agenda and an upstream design agenda for keeping materials in the economy, much more so than a waste and recycling agenda.
All good points. Michael, what are your key takeaways?
Yeah, my key takeaway is that I see the different points and approaches from the different stakeholders. And I think also what Christina highlighted too, we need more active information. I think everybody is so positive to try to help, because as a part of the society, we know we have to make a change. But I see sometimes this is almost like against each other. And if we can bring this energy towards all heading in the same direction of building on each other, creating new ideas and solving this together, then this is for me one platform what you created, which hopefully helps a bit into this. And that's what I would wish that we can do much more, because as everybody said, we can only do this together, and breaking new ground means we need to listen to diverse ideas, but also be open to listen to others.
Great. And Christina, how about we'll conclude with the Commission. What are your concluding thoughts today?
So I think for me, what has been very good is to see the the overall systematic recognition by all of us of the great opportunity ahead of us, coupled with the willingness to take on the challenges, because we realize this is not an easy path ahead of us. So let it be from the circular economy angle, from the sustainability angle, from the chemicals and chemical risk angle. We also see that there are challenges ahead of us, and that we are indeed the ones that are willing to take these challenges and willing to embrace this responsibility that we have, because as it has been said before today, we must be we are the ones that must take on this responsibility, because we may very well be the last generation to be able to do this willingly and to take these challenges. So from my side, quite happy to see the recognition of the opportunity also ahead of us, and the willingness to do it all together.
I think that's an excellent final point and a sobering reminder of just what the stakes are here in this battle against climate change and battle for the environment. I want to thank our panelists today for some really excellent contributions. I know I definitely learned a lot. And I also want to thank the audience for following along and asking some great questions themselves. Certainly this is a discussion that will continue as we continue looking at chemistry's role in this transformation. So I wish all of you an excellent rest of your day, and we'll see you here next time for the next Your Active Debates. Take care.